Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes Podcast. We're here with Tom Wright, who's the president of Syscon Automation. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure, as always. So tell us a little bit about Syscon Automation. This one's going to be fun for me because it's like being a kid again, asking how things work, but I'll try to make it an adult podcast here. But tell us about the company.
It is pretty exciting stuff. So we were formed 20 years ago by our founder, Bob Bruce. He did his schooling in Wisconsin, came out to ski, traditional Utah story, loved it, brought his little family out here, and continued to grow the company from a one-man shop into our engineering firm, about 25 people today. And we focus on really three verticals: smart conveyance, robotic build, we call them machine build, and then also process control. If you think of anything that's a liquid running through a pipe that needs to be controlled in a mixer, a vat, or something like that, that's what we do. Just
Okay.
control that.
And so when people think of a factory or an assembly line, they've got these machine builders. We can call them robots. You told me that's okay. And it's any number of things on planet Earth that they're helping make, right?
It really becomes very creative on what you can do with them, yes, and becoming more so. And not as much as, people were really worried in the beginning that, they would replace people for jobs and what have you. I think we've really gone past that in the last 25 years, and it's really augmenting people. And so it'll take a task that either humans can't do or can't do very frequently without hurting themselves and what have you. You've seen the pictures of the automotive manufacturing, and them assembling cars.
Yeah.
It hasn't hurt the automotive manufacturing at all. If anything, it's increased it. And so that's what we really are looking for, is augmentation into the machines and to the processes so that we can do them better, faster, and stronger.
Yeah. And so for anyone that's done manual labor, done something in repetition they don't like, they've probably had the idea of, it'd be great if there was a robot or something else. And most people aren't smart enough to do it, right? Whether it's like on the family farm, or if you're Henry Ford, there's a better way to do it. And so he was obviously building the company and building out machine and robot help, right?
Right.
Greatly influencing how successful they were. And so when I think of that, I think of, Henry Ford and automotive, but it could be something as small as microprocessors or pills or something even delicate, right?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, we do a lot of nutraceuticals, and so from both an assembly standpoint and then packaging associated with them as well. A lot of quality control inspection. The inspections from a robotic standpoint are phenomenal. You can present the robot in multiple ways. We're doing one with X-ray inspection, that you can do. And so it really gives you a lot of opportunity. And they used to do it with microscope, and so now instead of staring through a microscope each day, you can review a report, and it's, presented in a automated and consistent manner.
Yeah. Okay, so some of your customers, give a few examples, both big and small, and when they reached out to you, how did the process go? Like, we got a problem, we don't have anything, or none of these things work very good anymore. Can you guys make them better? How was the initial meeting with
I'll
these?
take one example. For example, a bath bomb. A very popular, scented item, and they were having both a manufacturing problem, a identity. They couldn't keep their lot sizes and everything consistent, so they're having problems from an assembly standpoint and manufacturing control standpoint, and then from a production standpoint on packaging. And so it literally took all of our talents, from the beginning to the end, and we were able to present them with, manufacturing help from a consistency standpoint, as well as coding and recipe management, from a process control standpoint, and then from a packaging standpoint on the other end. So that really, even on a small scale, really gives you an idea of what we're able to do.
Yeah. And so this requires an understanding of electricity and engineering and science and math. If you guys have a net new client, right? It probably involves a lot of imagination too.
It does, yeah. And so you really do get creative. It's fun to be able to get in the brainstorming sessions of how we can help with this. We had a spa manufacturer approach us, and they were having a consistency problem on being able to manufacture their spas. And so we were able to take a robot and literally spray the rigidizer that's called to be able to make the spa so that it doesn't fall apart. And not a very fun process because it's really nasty, to be involved and what have you. And their consistency was really bad. And now they can put it in a paint booth, with a robot, and their consistency has gone up. And in addition to that, it's scalable. They literally can, do 4 lines instead of just one to be able to manufacture. So it's worked out very well.
So in that example, there's obviously a pain point, and they've got to either take their medicine and keep being unproductive or put a capital allocation out. Do you guys help them understand like the ROI over years, I would assume?
We do. And oftentimes, they're a little sticker shocked, to be able, a typical robot could be a couple $100,000, in an install basis. And so in the beginning, a lot of these guys come in, they'll be a little bit sticker shocked, like, ooh, I was hoping it was 10,000, or 20,000,
Yeah.
And, but what's fun is they come back about a year later and they say, okay, we're ready, it's mentally, because we can do the ROI, but they're not ready for it financially. They're not ready,
Yeah.
either from a funding standpoint or even from a mental allocation standpoint. And, but it's fun because they do come back.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yep, we're ready. Even
Yeah.
though the ROI is 3 months, 4 months, they're still not mentally ready to put that, allocation out.
Yeah. Unless they're the ones like in the paint booth, then they'll push it forward a little bit faster.
That's right. That's right.
So what's the life cycle for these robots? Are there some that are kind of eternal? Is it they're done in 10 years? How long do they last?
It's more than 10. It's 20, 25 years. You can do some maintenance or should do some maintenance on them. So they do have joints, that can be repaired. But our industry is really only 20, 30 years old, and so we still have Gen 1 robots out there that are still working and doing well. And so there is even a secondary market where they'll take used robots, refurbish them and their joints. They have some hydraulic fluid in the joints, and so they'll put new seals in, things like that, and then push them back out into the market. And so they've been a well, received from a mechanical standpoint as well as a long-lasting product.
Yeah. And so you guys, you'll get a client and a customer, and you'll know what you have in stock and inventory that you could implement. But then you guys need to get more robots, right? And you mentioned before when we were talking, there's a big plant that robots make the robots, right?
Right.
And so you guys will order those robots based on the specs and the mission of the client. How long does it take on average from start to finish to get what the client wants set up and operational?
So recently, with supply chain issues, it's grown. Typically it was 6 weeks was really kind of our standard, supply. If you ordered really anything, you could get it within 6 weeks, which was great. Nowadays, sometimes that's months. It could be 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. We're working hard to be able to, fix that problem, but that's a supply chain issue, and it's a little larger than what we can solve ourselves.
Yeah. And so is that like, do they need to shut down their business for a couple of days, a couple of weeks as you guys are installing all of this? How does that work?
Yeah, and it depends. Sometimes they'll have lines, that we can do a line while they're, doing their regular business in a paint booth, for example. We could install it really while they were in manufacturing. They just went around it. If you're doing a control line, like an automotive line, for example, if they have multiple lines, it'll work, to be able to just work on the line. So oftentimes it's not shutting down the entire thing. But the typical install, I would say, would be 10 days, probably, from a beginning to end of the installation, period. Some obviously can be simple and done in a couple of days, and some, might be a little longer than that.
Yeah. And is there something that's kind of a reoccurring thing that doesn't seem to work as well as you want it to?
We hope not. Yeah. I'd say, gotchas. We really don't have a lot of gotchas or, problems that we're trying to solve from a programming standpoint. It's fairly mature of what we're trying to do, and we try to keep it fairly repetitive, so that we're not reinventing the wheel, nor are we adding a whole bunch of risk from, of a success standpoint. And so we've been able to control that pretty good. I'd say the biggest challenge is just scale, where instead of 1 or 2, it's 50 or 30 or, 10. And so that kind of gets complicated just from an electrical, connection standpoint and making sure everything is balanced and installed. Yeah, it's been pretty good and pretty mature. The robotic industry continues to add things to it, but it's been mature for probably 15 years. So it's been nice.
Yeah. And I assume the technology advances are always in favor of like making the managers and the people be more efficient as well, right? Whether they can operate it from their phone as they sit in their desk or take a smoke break versus going and plugging in information. How do you guys stay as far ahead of that as possible?
Yeah, and that's almost called edge computing, and that's getting really, really popular today, to be able to operate both remotely, to communicate remotely. Your sensors are getting smarter so that they'll start communicating. You take a bearing, for example, or even, a bearing on a robot. It starts to have sensors that will feed back and tell that you have a certain vibration, limit, and which means it's going bad, and so you can report that. We've got motor vibration sensors that we can tell when a motor starts to go out. So the preventative maintenance side of it is actually pretty cool, because you can take all that information, literally AI it, and put it into a chart that allows you to say, hey, this motor's going to fail in 3.6, hours,
wow.
days or years, type of a thing. And it becomes, very useful information from when you have, 180 motors in your plant. So
yeah,
pretty cool.
And what, with your client base, are there clients that are like too big for you and your team, too small? How do you guys figure out your ideal client base?
We have a kind of a minimum project size of, about 30,000. So that's fairly small, You could get smaller than that if you wanted to do something at home or what have you. That kind of wouldn't be our stuff. From a too large standpoint, we haven't really found one of those yet, I think that self-limits, we're not huge, but nor are a lot of our customers within Utah huge. So like we mentioned, we've done jobs for Tesla, and but it was only a portion of it on their battery and battery testing. And so that was an easy scope for us to be able to handle, ourselves. We weren't building everything that Tesla did, nor really was any one single, vendor doing that. So
yeah. So you guys do work with competitors on bigger projects then?
Yep. Yeah. And the industry actually is very collaborative. It's because it's kind of mature, and because we're a bunch of engineers that enjoy the technology side point, we go to these professional conferences, and it's really, sharing. It's really quite rewarding how much can get shared from a technology standpoint, even though there really are your competitors in other, geographies. So
yeah,
you really can learn from that. It's worked out really well.
Yeah, that's good. Better than everyone being cutthroat.
Yep.
Over the years, has there been anything that you thought could never be automated and robotics could help out, but is now a reality?
Yes. Let me think of a good example would probably be, even just conveyance is probably a good example. In the beginning, conveyance was pretty much motor driven. But one motor would drive, hundreds of feet of conveyor. You couldn't really control any on-ramps or off-ramps or, things that would allow you to merge and things like that. And all of that in recent technology with variable speed drives and more sophisticated controls with gating and what have you has really allowed us to do pretty magical things from a conveyance standpoint. It's really, you think Amazon and their distribution, it's that, only scaled down some, really. And so that's allowed us to really, succeed. And the information side of it has become a big portion of it, because now it comes in digitally, your address that you're shipping to and what have you, and you can consolidate your zip codes and your states and everything so that it's all bundled to be able to go out easier into your distribution.
Yeah. Do you and your team find yourselves wherever you go, whether it's dinner or the movies or whatever you do in life, that you're looking at things from an engineering perspective constantly and thinking that should be automated and a robot should be doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't turn that off. At least I haven't been able to. Yeah, one of my fun ones is display systems, in shopping. I'll go with my wife to the mall, what have you. Yes, there still is a mall. And I'll look at these, pretty cool, intricate mechanical methods of being able to put things together in a cost-effective manner. And you learn from it. Some of my products have actually incorporated some of those concepts. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. And do you guys allow your engineers, both software and hardware, to kind of tinker about and have a little bit of free time to tinker on some of the things they're passionate about?
Yeah. We've got some 3D printers in the shop and what have you that are, part of the innovation side of it and allows us to do it. We do get busy sometimes, and, that isn't it. But when we do have some downtime, that's a great time to invest.
Yeah. And as far as materials, like with 3D printing, is that going to be a part of what you guys do in the future?
I don't think from a product, well, one of the nice things that really come in is our bracketry, to hold a sensor, for example, has always been very difficult to be able to manufacture, model, perfect, and what have you. Nowadays, you can print a 3D bracket very easily out of your modeling program and then go verify that you like it. And then even in small quantities, you can print it, for what you want. If you want to do hundreds of it, you send it out, to be able to get manufactured. But that's worked out very, very well. I wouldn't say that we're modeling an actual robot, However, we do have 3D modeling for the robot motion itself. And that's become a big portion of what we do, is everything's almost digitally imaged first. And then you can actually verify your tolerances and your motion and make sure everything's in compliance. And then you literally put that same program into the robot, and magically it works the same.
Oh, gotcha. Well. Going back to kind of the customer onboarding, do you guys have a system where you can kind of corral all of the confusion with the client of, we want this to do this, this, and this, right? Do you guys follow a system where everyone's on the same page and comfortable with this is possible, this isn't, this will take an extra 2 months if you do it this? How do you guys not be overbearing with the client even though you already know the answers?
That's right. A lot of it is done in the sales process, which is nice, So as much scope definition as we can in the sales process, we try to do. There's some details that just aren't necessary, and we'll explain to the customer. We'll build that when it comes, Don't worry, it's fine. But a lot of the scope definition occurs in the sales process, and so then we're able to start off the project with a defined scope definition. Should there be changes or need for changes, what have you, it's a good discussion point and a good baseline to be able to do that. And then we track that with software that allows us to be able to scale it for multiple projects. If we were, pen-based, it would be very, very challenging today. But with the software base, we're able to do it on a template, and then that template is able to be followed in a repetitive method. Works out really well.
Gotcha. And so you finish the job, the client's happy. Do you guys also check and monitor your work from your HQ?
Yes, we do have some remote monitoring depending on the customer's needs and willingness to open up, a port for us. But that is, part of what we do. Some of them we can do this remote monitoring from a vibration standpoint, what have you, and to do some preventative maintenance opportunities. We could actually contact the customer, hey, you're going to have a failure here, type of thing. We can tell whether there is a fault in our program remotely, and to be able to understand, the reason for it and where it came from. Help either from a resetting standpoint, or if it's an incessant fault, to understand what changed in the process. So it's worked out really well.
Cool. And do you guys ever find that you've got the job, you've got the client, it's wrapping up, and they might not have anyone there to run the actual robots and machines and everything?
Luckily, we haven't had an empty situation. There has been stress, where one guy's running around somewhat wildly, and they wish that he would have two or three.
Yeah.
We certainly witnessed that, but luckily, not nobody. And so, enough customers have enough retention, to be able to operate it, and that's worked out well for us.
Very cool. So, over your tenure, things have changed a lot. And as you mentioned, it's a fairly new industry. As you look into the future, what are you most excited about for your company, and what do you think would be a cool innovation across all of your competitors that people would find interesting?
Well, just the digital convergence of information and being able to, the internet helped us so much from a tool of information in our daily use, particularly with software. The machines have never really been a part of that, and they're becoming a part of that. And so as we get more information off of the machines, we're able to digest and process that information, make better decisions, and then integrate that into a complete solution where you could literally have, a remote plant that would be making different portions, like assembly line, like a Henry Ford, but it would be virtual. It'd literally be in multiple locations. And that's pretty cool. The speeds are already there. We can do it. And it's coming. They call that Internet 4.0. Everybody gets excited about it, but it's pretty cool from a process standpoint.
Yeah. And I can imagine, 10, 20 years later, you could have your company and you're running the factory, and instead of getting a phone call late at night, something's wrong, you just look at your iPad or something and you kind of know.
That's right.
Bird's eye view.
Yep.
Very cool. As I mentioned, this could be a 4 or 5 hour podcast. And we should have done it with on site with some cool machines and robots. But thank you so much for taking the time to join, Tom. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.